Better equipped and more efficient, Renault's improved third-generation Megane family hatchback is now a smarter proposition, in more ways than one. If you're shopping for something focused or Astra-shaped in this segment, it'll probably no longer be one of the first cars you'll immediately think of, but it still offers a very complete all-round package that's difficult to ignore. Ordinary family cars can no longer be ordinary. People want polish these days, a smarter feel and high-tech features that make them feel pampered and premium, which means that in the Focus-sized family hatchback segment, they may well find themselves looking at cars like this one, Renault's much improved third-generation Megane. With the French maker's position as one of Europe's biggest car makers severely under threat, and a slimmed-down range of conventional vehicles forced upon dealers by this brand's commitment to electric power, it's hard to overstate the importance of this model if you happen to run a showroom with a yellow-backed silver diamond above the door, especially as it failed to make much of an impact in the original Mark III guise we first saw in early 2009. But then, with underpinnings borrowed from a Mark II model that dated all the way back to 2002, and smart but unremarkable styling, there wasn't really much back then to set this car apart. Something Renault claims to have thoroughly addressed with this much improved model, thanks to advanced new engines, revised styling and improved specifications to build upon existing virtues like the spacious cabin and the comfortable ride. Will it all be enough to rejuvenate this French family hatchback's appeal amongst Focus folk? Let's find out. There's nothing especially sophisticated about this car under the skin, so it won't come as too much of a surprise if I tell you that there's nothing very remarkable about the way that it drives. It lacks the clever multi-link rear suspension setup found in a Focus or on a Golf, but then so do rivals like Vauxhall's Astra and Peugeot's 308. What's important here is that Renault's engineers have made the most of what they have. And as anyone who's driven a Megane Renaultsport will tell you, it's amazing what they can achieve with an apparently unpromising set of mechanical ingredients. Detailed tweaks made to this improved Megane include a revised front suspension subframe arrangement to improve directional precision, and a retuned rear suspension setup that's supposed to give a more agile, responsive ride as well as improved cornering. Sportier trim variants, like the one I've got here, feature the slightly stiffer setup used on the Megane coupe. But none of it really engenders the Renaultsport feeling, nor should it. Normal Megane customers, after all, don't really want to drive on their door handles. Talk to the engineers and you discover that many of the improvements were qualified by the need to preserve the ride comfort, refinement and ease of use that existing Megane owners so appreciate. Perhaps that's why the supposedly improved electric power steering system still lacks feel. At least it makes the car easy to pilot around town. In fact, the whole approach with this model seems to have been based around making it as easy as possible to drive. Everything, steering, pedals and gear changes, all very light, something you'll either like or you won't. The same comment really applies to the rather incongruous looking instrument display with its digital speedo and analog rev counter. If you plan to take on the likes of the Ford Focus, the Vauxhall Astra, the Volkswagen Golf and the Peugeot 308, then you need to come equipped with a lot of engine choices, and the Megane doesn't fall shy in that department. In fact, the choice available here has been added to with the addition of 3 efficient stop and start units. I've chosen the most interesting of the trio to try, the 1.2 litre TCE, the first Renault petrol engine to use direct fuel injection and turbocharging to create fuel-efficient performance. It's yet another example of engine downsizing in this segment, following the success of the Ford Focus 1 litre EcoBoost models. As in that case, the objective here was to provide the performance of a 2-litre petrol engine with the fuel economy of a diesel. But because Renault has stuck with 4 cylinders rather than switching to a 3-cylinder arrangement, you don't get the buzzy thrum under power that you'd find in the Ford. You don't get quite the same fuel and CO2 returns either, but this Megane can still offer a vast improvement over the old 1.6-litre 16-valve petrol unit that this 1.2 TCE variant was designed to replace, and offer a driving experience that's much nicer. Thanks to a 40 Newton-metre torque hike over the old 1.6, the pulling power is much greater and more accessible, with over 90% of the 190 Newton-metres available from just 1600 RPM, so you don't have to row the thing along with the gear lever. Rest to 60 miles an hour takes 10.9 seconds on the way to a top speed of 118 miles an hour. Ultimately though, for diesel-like pulling power, you really need a diesel, and the vast majority of Megane customers opt for a 1.5-litre version. Now, the 1.5 DCI 110 is Renault's best-selling global engine, and Megane customers who wisely decide against the entry-level, the much older 90 bhp variant of this unit, get the DCI 110 in 3 flavours: with or without stop and start, or mated to a silky smooth 6-speed EDC automatic gearbox, one of those clever twin clutch transmissions that automatically selects the next gear before you've even left the last one. Whichever way you go with a 1.5 DCI 110, there's at least 240 Newton meters of torque of pulling power on offer, enough to get you from rest to 60 in just over 12 seconds on the way to a top speed of 118 miles an hour. Should that be insufficient in your 5-door Megane hatch or Sport Tourer estate, then 2 other diesel choices remain. The one I'd ignore is the older 2-litre DCI 160 unit, an engine with very few real-world benefits over the far more economic 1.6 DCI 130 that's nearly 50% cleaner and more frugal. Now, the 1.6 DCI 130 is a very good choice if you plan to use your Megane for towing, because it's got 320 Newton meters of torque. That's enough to get you from rest to 60 in under 10 seconds on the way to a top speed of 124 miles an hour. The styling of the original version of this Mark III Megane wasn't especially memorable, but it was essentially quite smart, with a dynamic stance thanks to the particularly short front and rear overhangs. So not too much of a nip and tuck was needed to bring it up to date. I've always quite liked the front end, with its sharp creases flowing down from the A-pillars across the bonnet. Well, now it has more of a contemporary look, with a gloss black and chrome trimmed bumper sitting above a sleeker front air intake, and on all but entry-level models, trendy LED daytime running lights. Move along the side past the restyled alloy wheels and you might struggle to see the Latin influence that Renault reckons is at work here. But there's a strong coupe-like look and a feature line that culminates at the rear in 2-piece light clusters. You're more likely, though, to remember the cabin of this car, if only because of the rather odd digital speedometer analog rev counter instrument arrangement. At least it's clear. Renault would rather that you focused on the quality of the fixtures and fittings. The soft touch dashboard cowling, for example, which is engineered to resist the wear and tear of daily use and the aging effects of sunlight. And the high quality of the trim and materials chosen, especially in plusher variants like this one. But you don't have to choose a plusher variant for this Megane to feel smartly turned out, something that gives it a major advantage over competitors from Volkswagen and Ford. It's certainly very comfortable here at the wheel, with reach and rake adjustment and more seat height adjustment than any other car in the class can offer. And there's plenty of practicality too, with all the usual cup holders, an underfloor stowage compartment on either side at the front, and door bins capable of holding a 1-litre bottle. thanks to a long 2.64 metre wheelbase. Interior room has always been a selling point of this design, something you especially appreciate from a seat in the rear. Renault tell me that 3 fully sized adults will be quite comfortable here, though I doubt that were the journey to be very long. But then no car in this class can properly accommodate 3 burly people. Should that be required, then they'll probably be better off in this Megane than they would be in many other models in this segment, and 3 kids will be quite comfortable. Luggage is well served too, the 372 litre boot being one of the largest and best shaped in the class, easily able to accommodate a couple of overnight bags and 2 family suitcases. And there's a concealed underfloor compartment for valuables. If you want to extend that and push forward the rear seats, it's a bit of a convoluted process. You have to pull up the rear seat bases first before you can do it. But once you've done that, then there's a large and level cargo area of 1,129 litres in size. Now, if that's not enough, then you really should have opted for the Megane Sport Tourer model, the Estate. That gives you 524 litres in the ordinary boot, extendable by pushing the rear seats forward to as much as 1,600 litres. Prices for mainstream versions of this Megane sit in the same £16,500 to £24,000 bracket common to most volume family hatchbacks. Not all of these are available with an Estate body style. In this Megane's case, it wears a Sports Tourer badge and is available at an £800 model for model premium over the ordinary 5-door hatch. There's also a 3-door coupe model available at a £500 premium model for model over this 5-door. As for engines, well, if you go for the 1.5 litre DCI diesel 110 that most customers choose, then you have to pay a £375 premium to get it with the stop and start system that produces the headline economy figures. And if you do that, then you're looking at paying around £500 more than you would for the entry-level 1.2 TCE petrol variant, which makes that petrol model well worth considering over the diesel if you're a low mileage customer. As for the top-of-the-range 1.6 litre DCI 130 engine, well, because that only comes with a plusher trim level, you're looking at well over £20,000 for one of those. List pricing is usually only a starting point for negotiation in this part of the market, but I do need to put Renault's figures here into some kind of perspective. You're looking at paying a few £100 more for this Megane, model for model, than you would if you went for an equivalent Ford Focus, Vauxhall Astra or Peugeot 308. But equip either of these 3 to the Renault's level and much of that difference would be negated. As for a Volkswagen Golf, well, you're looking at paying £700 or £800 more for one of those than you would for this Megane. And of course the Renault is better equipped. Now, whichever 5-door hatch, coupe or Sports Tourer Estate Megane model you choose, and engine-wise, I'd suggest you select between either the 1.2 litre TCE petrol unit I've got here, or decide between either 1.5 or 1.6 litre DCI diesels. Whichever of those you go for, then you should find your car to be very well equipped, even in entry-level form. Because all models get things like alloy wheels, daytime running lights, front fog lamps, power windows and mirrors, things like a trip computer, air conditioning, a height adjustable driver's seat, cruise control, Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, and a powerful audio system with USB compatibility and controls accessible from the leather-tipped steering wheel. From mid-range level onwards, all models get a TomTom satellite navigation system that has a Google local search function to find you places of interest and give you weather forecasts, can give you speed camera location warnings, and can allow you to get Europe-wide traffic information. Safety-wise, this was the first car in its class to have been awarded a 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating way back in 2002. Since then, Renault has been the only maker to have been awarded this accolade 11 different times, and safety is still a strong selling point. There's ESC stability control fitted across the range, and as you'd expect, anti-lock brakes with electronic brake force distribution to make them more effective, and brake assist to aid in emergency stops. For this model, Renault has also developed Hill Start Assist to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions, also ASR anti-skid regulation, and also CSV understeer control to help with corner turning. Now, it's all there to help you avoid an accident, but if you just can't, there are all the usual airbags fitted, as well as front and rear curtain ones, and Isofix child seat fastenings. Renault's designers have even fashioned the front bumper so that it minimises pedestrian injuries in the event of a collision. If you want to go further, then a tempting option is what Renault calls its Visio system, which includes a lane departure warning setup to stop dozy drivers veering out of their lanes on the highway, and an automatic headlight system that will automatically dip the lights for you in the face of oncoming traffic at night. Lighter weight and optimised aerodynamics have meant that Renault has been able to match the current high family hatch class standard for low running costs. Now, if that's a priority for you, then I'd recommend that you try one of the 1.5 litre DCI 110 diesels first. Variants that can achieve up to 80.7 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out as little as 90 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's if you opt for the engine with a start-stop system, which costs extra. If you don't have start-stop, then the returns fall quite dramatically to 68.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 106 grams per kilometre of CO2. Even the pokier 1.6 litre diesel, the DCI 130, the most powerful and frugal engine of its size in the world at time of launch, manages 70.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out just 104 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's about 15% better than a rival Ford Focus 2 litre TDCI 140 and about 10% better than competitors like Volkswagen's Golf 2 litre TDI 140 or Vauxhall's Astra 1.7 CDTI 125 PS. The 1.2 litre TCE petrol model that I'm driving here deserves a special mention too for its frugality. You get 53.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, and its cleanness, it puts out 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. So those are returns about 25% better than the old 1.6 litre 16 valve petrol unit. That would give a normal owner an operating range of around 700 miles between fill-ups. All that means that most Megane variants qualify for Renault's Eco 2 branding, designating models that emit less than 120 grams per kilometre of CO2 and are 95% end-of-life recoverable by weight, using 5% of plastic sourced from recycling. Perhaps more importantly, insurance groupings range between 13 and 20 for mainstream models on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, and residual values are no worse than you'd find with other mainstream competitors. Oil changes on most of the engines are needed only every year or 18,000 miles. Most owners will want to benefit from Renault's 4 Plus ownership package that gives you a 4-year 100,000 mile warranty, 4 years or 48,000 miles of free routine servicing, 4 years of roadside assistance, and 4 years of PCP or lease finance, depending on status. Renault had to step up its game and improve its third generation Megane. It has. You still couldn't call this a driver's car, but smarter, more frugal and better equipped, it's now a real-world alternative to family hatchbacks like Vauxhall's Astra, French rivals like Peugeot's 308 or Citroën C4, or the Korean contingent Hyundai's i30 or Kia's Ceed. Whether it's also an alternative to Ford's Focus really depends on how highly you prioritise driving dynamics. If you're prepared to trade a bit of that in return for more equipment and better long-distance comfort, then even against Ford's market leader, this Renault stacks up very well. The question, though, is whether buyers in this segment who might have already dismissed this Megane out of hand will take another look at its much improved value proposition. They'd do well to consider it. This may not be the European market leader it was a decade or so ago, but it remains roomy, quiet, safe and pleasantly plush, even in entry-level form. In other words, a compact family 5-door that ticks an awful lot of boxes. and one that an awful lot of people, I think, would rather enjoy owning.